Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of The Practice. This show is an unrehearsed look into my workflow. I'm Stuart. I'm a 3D artist, illustrator, designer, and your pal, and I'm excited to have you back for another episode this week. You can see things are a little different than our typical episode right from the gate. Starting in Illustrator this week, which is a little bit uncommon for us. We typically hang out in Cinema 4D most of the time. But don't worry, I've got that open as well. And what we're going to do, no, minimize that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a really cool abstract gradient using some of the new features in Illustrator. And then we're going to take it over into Cinema and use the sculpting tools to create a really fun, colorful, and abstract piece. So let's just dive right in. In Illustrator, where is our gradient? There it is. So there's this new thing called the Freeform Gradient tool, which is really pretty awesome in Illustrator. And it's this third button over here. So what I've done is I've just drawn a big rectangle inside of an artboard that's set up to be 1920 by 1080. And that's the same size that I'm going to be using over in Cinema when we get over there. I'm going to be using camera mapping to project, we're using camera mapping to sort of project this gradient on in an exactly 1920 by 1080 format, and hopefully use some perspective to kind of mix this freeform gradient onto our geometry. So anyway, when you press this, when we create the box and click on gradient, automatically we get this white to black line. When we hit freeform gradient, it's automatically going to drop in these little points, and these points have these little knobs on the outside and these little outlines, and the size of that outline that you can click and drag determines the amount of space that gradient is going to take up. It automatically drops in 4 of these, but then when you double click on them, it brings up a color mixer. Then you can start blending. Colors like a gradient, but in a free-form way. It's really, really neat. So what I'm going to do is the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a really cool abstract gradient composition. And I'm thinking I'm going to stay in this sort of warm orange, pink, red kind of range. I'm going to mix some things in there to complement those and keep it interesting. Because we are going to want some contrast. So I'm going to drop in like a pale yellow here and there. And you can see, so this pale yellow dot is going to control sort of everything in this corner of the rectangle. Get some sort of reddish tones in there. I think maybe we'll drop a little bit more of that super pale yellow in over here. We can get some really nice mixing of colors going on, really simply. The proximity the dots have to one another and the size of this ring around them really sort of controls the way the colors interact, the way they mix. think I need to get a little bit of purple over here to kind of balance things out. Pinky purple kind of action. All right, so that's a pretty good start. And we can also come in and adjust all this stuff later, which I imagine we're going to be doing. All right, cool. That's a start. Let's go with that for now. We can always come back in and adjust. I'm sure we will be. We can adjust in Cinema as well. So save this, and I'm just going to export a ping. Super simple. I want to use artboards here so I can make sure that my ping is exactly 1920 by 1080. Export. 72 DPI is good. There we go. So now we've got, first let me open that up. So we've got our gradient file. I'm just going to drag that right into Cinema. That's going to create a default material with our image in the color channel, which is what we want. Perfect. So next, I'm going to create a camera. First, I'm going to sort of get to a head-on position. I'm going to create a camera. I'm going to go inside the camera. I'm going to zero out this rotation and the position, at least in the x-axis. And then I'm just going to add in a few bits of geometry, just really simple. Just kind of place them around. Maybe I should have something wider too. I'll throw a landscape in there. I wonder is it sea level? This is way too much geometry for now. Oops. This is going to be just sort of a backdrop to catch all that color at first until we start sculpting. So drag this back in space a little. I'm even going to angle it so it catches more of the camera's view. There we go. Now this is just a start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a null group. I'm going to add all of my geometry to it so far. I'm going to throw this texture onto it. And you can see that automatically it's applied, but it's applied differently to both of these spheres. But that's not exactly what we want. It's a start, but that's not what we want. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over here to the tag itself, and I'm going to turn on camera mapping. Boom. And then it's going to totally break the texture. Then there's going to be this big drop down that comes down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag our camera into this camera line. And you can see now what it's done is for this whole group of things, it's projected. I'm going to turn off tiling for now so you can sort of see it projects the gradient across the geometry mapped exactly to the camera. So you can see our camera here has sort of this cone which represents its depth of field, or its field of view, I should say, and that gradient is mapped exactly to it based on this angle. So what's cool now is we can just start, whoops, we can grab things inside of this group, just start moving them around, and the gradient will apply to them. So now what we can do is just start adding geometry into this group and have the gradient just start applying to it. So now when we start pushing this geometry around, we're going to get some really cool, interesting results. So that's going to be the majority of this episode is creating these abstract shapes. with the gradient tool. And I'm probably also going to add some nice lighting effects. I'm going to add some depth of field, and we're going to get this thing looking really, really sweet. So first, I'm just going to kind of get some geometry in there. I'm going to make these guys editable. I'm going to go into my sculpt palette. Just going to start moving things around. I make this the size of this grab tool a lot larger than it is, like triple the size practically, just so I can make nice big soft deformations to these. All right. Before I start add lighting, I am going to add lighting eventually. Before I do that, though, I want to fill this space out a little bit more with some geometry. Oops. What I'm going for in these forms really is a lot of soft, rounded, organic kind of shapes. I've done some experiments like this in the past, and I've really been fond of how they turned out. It's kind of like these glowy blobs. And when we start texturing and adding materials and lighting and we start messing with this gradient material in cinema so that it's more than just a color diffusion channel, it's going to start looking really, really sweet. Of course, we can always go back in and change the colors in Illustrator too. This is certainly not set in stone. All right, let's actually add a little bit of lighting just to start playing with that, see what we're dealing with. Angle it off. I'm going to click on this objects tag right here in my sculpt palette, my sculpt menu, my sculpt layout, whatever you want to call this. alter the time here. Let's make it kind of early morning. I find that early morning or late evening usually works well for these physical skies because we get that kind of low angle of the sun. And so that's okay. You can see sort of what we're working with here. Lots more to do there. Private. I always forget to do that. I'm sorry, everyone. Thought I did that today. Always do that. I also want to see, if we go to frontal on this mapping, see what kind of difference we get. Might be pretty similar. It is pretty similar. It's not going to be warped. I think I like the camera perspective better. It's probably better. Got a lot of really similar shapes here. I feel like I should break this up a little bit. What I also might want to do is maybe adding a few simpler textures here to just kind of break up some of this overall gradient texture. I want to fill out my sort of workspace here with geometry first a little bit more before I do that, but let's just add in, well, no, let's use this guy. It was years of using Cinema 4D before I found out about these sculpt tools, and they've really unlocked a lot for me, especially because I like character modeling and organic modeling and landscapes so much. They've really, it's just been a huge boon to my workflow. All right, so let's kind of see what we have here. A little psychedelic, yeah? Maybe I should introduce some pointy elements or some sharp elements or something just to contrast a little bit with all this rounded stuff. I actually think that's a good idea. Let's try some of that. A lot of different types of contrast out there. Obviously, when you say contrast, a lot of times people think of light and dark. Contrast in the value range. But there's contrast in, in color, obviously, but in lightness and darkness, in shape, in, volume. When you're talking about animation, there's contrast in like the way the thing moves, if it's a soft, jiggly movement, if it's a, like a hard, staccatic, no easing kind of movement. Contrast is a great thing. Comes in a lot of shapes and sizes. Looks like we have a few more viewers now that I finally connected YouTube. Guys, I'm a silly 3D artist. I'm not a live streaming expert. So thanks for bearing with me on that. So now we're just going through and adding a little more detail in. Smaller bits. Scale is another great way to add variety and contrast. Contrast between a really large and a really small thing is sometimes amazing. I try to play with that a bit in my work. So let's see what we have here. I know we're going to have untextured pointy bits. Let's throw those in. Talk about easy texturing, right? Just a few minutes in Illustrator, and then we just apply it all to this null, which I love. I like keeping things simple. It's always great. So I'm going to try this with a little bit of GI. A little GUI while we're at it too. I'm going to go light on the GI. Or on the AO rather. That is probably too saturated. So let's drop that out. Definitely want this to be low and preview. Just so it runs a little quicker. Yeah. And that AO really helps define the form, the intersection points of these bits of geometry, of course, and the shadows are so much less like kind of blown out and monotone. We've got that AO in there, so I'm feeling that. Cool, and I like these pointy bits. They help provide some contrast. What I'm also going to do, let's try this. What's up with everyone out there in YouTube land? Do I have any viewers there? Did I totally screw the pooch by turning the video from private to public midway? Whoops. And honestly, I kind of don't care. This show, I hate to say it, is for me first and foremost. I hope it's a valuable resource for everyone, but in a lot of ways, I think about the show as, just an excuse for me to create work and a record of the work that I've completed. And I try not to get too caught up in the please subscribe, please like, fan giveaway, all that stuff. I mean, I don't know. Just try to make some cool shit. Don't get me wrong, I do like teaching. It is nice to be able to share the knowledge and interact and get hyped about Cinema 4D and just creating digital art, which I'm all about. And there's an awesome community of C4D users out there that I'm totally down with. But, I'm not trying to be a famous YouTuber. So we got kind of these kidney bean shaped pieces here. I'm kind of digging. They fit nicely amongst these other bits of geometry. I think what needs to happen is there needs to be a little more contrast in the texturing. And I'm still going to use this gradient from Illustrator to drive everything. I'm going to make some luminant versions of it, which will help. I'm just going to copy this material. Drag a copy over to the luminance channel. Don't forget to turn the luminance channel on. Get that all the time. Actually, I'm going to turn the color down a little bit. No, I'm going to turn the material, the texture from Illustrator down in the color channel a little bit. Just mix it in with some yellow, just to make this slightly less apparent. Make sort of a lighter, yellowier version of this. And then what we have to do is, I think, actually just switch the groups, right? So I'm going to make a copy of all that. I'm going to make another group. What I need to do is just swap this from one null group to the other. Because remember, we're using this camera projection mapping. So if I were to just drag this on there, well, actually, let's see what would happen. I'm not sure what would happen. Yeah, we'd get the gradient applied to the whole material. It's just a UVW map projection, which is not what we want. So, oops, and there I am doing it again. So what I want to do is select and put that guy in the new group. All right, let's see what we got. Yeah, so that's good. So I like having some contrast. I think we need to add more. Whoops, keep doing that. Oops. Got both of these. Probably also make a darker version of that soon too. It's actually easier to just cut them and paste them into the top of this hierarchy than it is to go searching for them in that other null group. It's kind of fun, it's shaping up. think I lost too much of the gradient in this luminant version. I'm going to bring some of that back. I'm also going to add a bit more reflection to each of these. It's going to hurt my render times, I know, but I don't care at this point. It's going to look good. Too much, maybe. A little blur goes a long way. Or sorry, a little reflection goes a long way. Let's call it 5%. That's going to provide a little more uniformity, actually, to these materials. I think then I want to go a little brighter with the luminance. This definitely got some Lisa Frank vibes going on right now. Serial Fade, hey, what's up? Thank you. I have some light music playing in the background. Normally, I love to listen to music while I work. The only problem is that if you guys are hearing the music that I'm hearing, then I can't monetize my YouTube videos because there will be copyright infringement claims, even if it's just background music. So yes, I love listening to different music. In fact, right now I've got some Fortet playing in the back, very light, which is a band I really enjoy listening to while I work. I find that frequently I can't really listen to lyrics while I'm working. Depends on what I'm working on, but if I need to concentrate on something, and it's not just sort of menial work, then it's really hard for me to work with, for example, rap music. A lot of rap music I find really distracting while I'm working, especially when I need to like concentrate and read and do specific things like that, which is a shame because I love listening to rap music at other points. So yeah, a lot of like electronic and instrumental kind of low-key stuff is what I get into. How about you? What do you like to listen to when you work? I like getting recommendations. I'm not that cool or connected with the new and happening music these days, so I like to ask people what they listen to and try to find out about new acts and musicians and artists that way. Oh, dude, I like Wolfpack a lot. Well, I dig Wolfpack. I dig some of their songs. They got this song 1612, I think it's called, something like that. And part of the reason I think I like that song so much is just because they have that vocalist, what's his name? Like Antoine something, I think, who is ridiculous. He's such a good singer. But yeah, Wolfpack's fun. Rat-a-tat's cool too. Nice. Okay, maybe I do know some cool music. We're on the same page there, Serial Fade. Dope. All right. So that was too shiny. Let's see how it looks turned down. But I like what it does to the quality of the light. I guess I just don't like that harsh sun reflection, which is another thing we can kill, that ridiculous specularity. Let's try that. I think I could just go right into basic, or no, sun. Lens flares, density. I thought there was just a scene by camera button I could click. Details. Damn, son. Sky. Well, how old are you, Serial? ASL, man. The hell? Oh, I'm just gonna do. Well, no, I don't want to turn off seen by reflections because I want some of these to be seen by reflections. What should I do? What should I do? Sun detail. Sun. Lens flares, that sounds fun. Yeah, I hear you, man. I just turned 35 a month ago. I'm an old bitch. Let's just try this. I'm going to turn reflection back up a little bit. Default specular, I'm just going to like basically kill. I think that's still going to give me that hard edge, but that'll help a little bit. That hard specular light. Well, Cyril, you're doing the right thing anyway, man. You're looking at the online content about cinema. Hopefully you play with it somewhat frequently. That's it. That's all you need to do to learn. Just use it. And it's never been easier to learn. There's a ton of resources out there. I'm just going to grab a bunch of these dudes. I'm going to group them and just copy them out here. See what we get. So it's a little bit like a landscape is how I'm looking at this. Got some hilly areas, some flat areas, mixing them all around. Seems like the right idea. Oops. No. It's starting to look better actually, and I don't mind the highlights coming from that direction. Interesting. Yeah. Let's turn the gamma up a bit. Good. Thinking I kind of want to get some tall elements in here. Oh, nice. Wow, you've seen all of them. That's crazy. Thanks for the support. Thanks for watching. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling these tall cucumber guys. I think we need to incorporate a few more of those. A little more height talking about, contrast and variety and stuff like that earlier. I think height is another thing we could think about to add some contrast and interest to our scenes. Let's see what that gets us. I hear you on the full-time job, Serial. I've been in that position. Kind of sucks. For the first 5 or 10 years of me doing this kind of thing, it was like, well, not 5 or 10, maybe let's say first 5 to 7. It was just me doing it on the weekends and the evenings and my spare time, just trying to learn as much as I can. And frankly, for the first few years, my skills weren't viable enough to do this in any professional capacity. But just stuck with it, kept working at it, eventually finally got a little job here or there that I could apply these skills to, and sort of growing it from there. And once I did have a big enough client base, I kind of made the leap, and got lucky a little bit along the way, of course, but I worked hard at it too, and took a leap of faith and went out on my own, knowing that if I could really dedicate myself full time to working on this type of thing, that the skills would improve, and I really committed myself to getting as good as I could at it and trying to become a professional at it. And so far so good. I've I freelanced for a while, and I went and had a full-time contract position doing illustration at Waze, which was really cool. But now I'm back at the freelance thing, working for myself, which actually I find I'm most motivated when I'm self-employed and working for myself and kind of doing my own thing. I find it easier to get out of bed in the morning. I stick to a schedule. I'm motivated and kind of on top of things. And I guess it's sort of only having yourself to blame is a useful situation to find yourself in. It's no one else's fault. I can't blame a bad boss or a bad manager. I got to get up and do my own thing, which is really, it's exciting. It can be hard. It can be, it's unsure. It's sort of feast or famine. Some months I won't get any paying projects at all, and that sucks. So I got to kind of be good with my money and save for a rainy day and all that good stuff. But really committing to it and not giving myself an out, just really deciding to go for it full-heartedly, I think has improved my skills and given me the time to improve on this kind of thing, get better at what I'm doing. I prioritized it. Really, you gotta if you want to get something done in your life, if something is meaningful to you, you have to prioritize it. There's some great quote. It's like if you want to have the time for something, you have to make it. You'll never find the time, which I think is a really good point. You'll never find the time. It doesn't just, it's not going to be in your car seat with the change. You're like, oh, okay, there's some extra time. Great. You got to make the time for the things that you prioritize. And so I tried to do that. And I think that, my skills and the amount of time, really the skills come from the amount of time that I'm able to spend doing this now. And I kind of unapologetically carve out a lot of my weekly schedule to just create work. So it's cool because I love doing it, and I'm finally starting to break through at a professional level. I get to share the fruits of my labor with all you fine folks. So there you go. Here's your unsolicited, bootstrappy kind of story, which I know people get sick of, so I'll spare you anymore. So here we go. I think the height added a lot of interest there. This sort of landscape going down here. I like the way they're casting some shadows across. Like the contrast of those luminant textures. Going too high on the gamma here, actually. I'm going to back that down a little bit. Go a little darker on the ambient occlusion to account for it. I mentioned briefly last week that I'm moving to Texas, which is crazy. I've been in the San Francisco Bay Area, not really even, I mean, I've been living in San Francisco for the last 5 years, um, which has been amazing. And it's provided really cool job opportunities. It's an amazing city. It's a physically beautiful area, actually. I've been, wasn't when I lived on the East Coast. I grew up in sort of the Philadelphia area. When I was on the East Coast, I wasn't really much of an outdoorsy kind of guy. I didn't really spend too much time hiking or camping. It wasn't really my bag. But having moved out west and seeing the Sierras and the Pacific Coast out here, it's just so unbelievably beautiful that it's enriched my life and made me enjoy the outdoors a lot more. So that's something I'll take with me, that I have the San Francisco Bay Area and California more generally to be thankful for. Um, Thanks, Cyril. I'm glad you think that's inspiring. And shoot, can I even scroll up? I missed this last comment you dropped. So you did try freelancing. That's cool. Now in Argentina, I see. Well, keep going, I'll say. Continue to inspire you a little bit. Maybe just, the first pass at freelancing didn't work, but maybe you can still do it a little bit on the side while you're doing your more lucrative job that you need to kind of pay the bills in the meantime. There's nothing wrong with taking on a more lucrative job in the meantime. I've definitely taken jobs purely for the money. That's okay. Sometimes artists will sort of look down on that, like getting a regular job is a dirty word. It's not. It's the rest of us have to do to, make it happen. And I guess it's just important to not sort of give up in the meantime, to spend those extra hours, not just watching TV or farting around, but, doing the thing that gets you inspired and motivated. So anyway, that's cool, Serial. But like I was saying, I'm going to be moving to Texas next month, which is kind of nuts. So decided that as great as San Francisco is, and as sad as I'm going to be to leave, and trust me, I'm going to be sad in many ways. It's too expensive here. My wife and I, we love the area, and we've explored it, and we've had a great time, but we really just want to go someplace where we can afford to buy a house and have all the self-employment dollars, which are a little harder to come by, as I was just discussing Serial here, have that go a little bit further. Take some of these freelance dollars to a cheaper market. A lot of my clients aren't even in the Bay Area. As great as San Francisco has been for our careers, a lot of our jobs aren't even in the Bay Area. So it's like, why pay the Bay Area overheads when you don't even necessarily have Bay Area clients? So that's sort of the logic there. Got to pay the bills, That is the truth. The credit card company doesn't care about your creative passions, nor should they. That's just fine. All right, getting there, getting there. Almost got this whole composition filled with these bubbly things, which is definitely what I want to do. Got this Lisa Frank landscape going down. All right, so once we get this whole view sort of filled in, nearly there, I'm going to start playing with maybe some depth of field, maybe adding a little bit of atmosphere and some fog. Just kind of softening this up, adding some perspective, some atmospheric perspective, let's say. Thanks, Serial. Appreciate you tuning in. Keep up the good work. And I'll catch you next week. A little too far. It's all right. All right. Let's see what we have. I mean, there is some perspective. There is a sense of things getting smaller as they go further into the distance. I'm going to transfer things over to this lighter folder again. I should also make a darker one. Oh yeah, definitely. Nice. Whoa. Let's reset that. Hmm. I'm going to throw this in a layer and bring the saturation way down. Curious what this will do. Let's also try adding in some atmosphere, which is a great way to just get a little bit more more of a sense of depth in your images. It creates atmospheric perspective in essentially a click of a button, and things that get further back in a scene will turn bluer, which is really cool. It's a great look, especially for landscapes and things like that. The little darker ones look nice. Not sure how I feel about that little adjustment. I think I'm going to leave it. It does add contrast and pushes some of those highlights a little further along, which I think is cool. And turn it down a little bit though. I still want there to be sufficient contrast between these lighter luminant blobs and the blobs that aren't luminant. It does add a bit of render time though. Let's see where we're looking. Not too bad. You can see how things are shifting in color and getting a little less contrasty as they move into the background, which I like. Dig that. Now I'm also going to try and add a little bit of fog. Fog can be a little bit finicky, so I want to see what position these things are. So that's negative 20. This is 30. Okay, so that'll give us a sense of where to position the fog. I pretty much always want the start height to be like underneath where the scene is. Max distance is almost always way too big, so I'm going to turn that down to 1 or 10,000. Turn the end height down a little bit. Maybe increase this guy a little. Let's make it a little more visible. And I'm going to make it a nice blue color. Let's try that out. I'm not sure if I'm seeing any fog at this point. Let's make it 100%. we'll make end height a little higher. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to take all of these, group them. I'm going to add a smoothing deformer in. I want a little bit of it. There's a little bit low poly in some places, which is cool for a scene this size. I don't want it to be like fully jacked, but there's a little bit of sort of hard edges here and there that I want to account for. So I can just add 25% smoothing to the whole thing. Might help. Let's see what we get there. Especially like these guys. We got to point on like a handful of these shapes. I don't want to go through and add subdivision surfaces to each of those. That would really kill render times. Yeah, so there's more fog, and it's really just reducing contrast in certain areas. So I'm going to turn it way up to 250, but I'm going to turn the height down a good bit. Let's look at the position. Like, so for example, this ball is at, oh no, it's at -70. Okay, so we can come down. But this guy is at 10, so we can definitely come down. It ends at 50 centimeters, so let's come down even a little more from there. I turn the start height up a little bit so that we can see our curve. This is our 0 point, and this is the curve. So, because right now I think what we're getting is just even fog sort of throughout, which is making everything look just less saturated, less contrasty, everything like that. Ambient occlusion's getting masked a little bit. But I do like some of the color mixing that's happening. It looks cool. Now we are getting sort of a fogginess to it. I'm also going to turn atmosphere up. Let's say 135. Yeah, and things did get a little smoother. The top edges of these are actually kind of what I wanted, so that's great. It's going to be much faster than adding all those subdivision surfaces. Even, yeah, that's good. It's actually even, it's made everything slightly smaller, which I think has a nice effect on the way they overlap. Some of these overlapping points actually are kind of more even, more organic. So that's cool. I don't like those guys as luminant ones. I'm going to make them darker. I'm going to make this guy luminant. In there. Beauty. This guy too, why not? Nice. That's weird. Add a little more contrast to the sun shadows as well. We're losing some of that. Yeah, that's better. You see, these shadows are a little better. And I think I'm even going to make it a little earlier in the morning so we get a little bit lower of an angle of sunlight, which will give us even longer shadows. What's interesting though, actually, is that the spheres with that smoothing thing, tag get less smooth, unfortunately. Spheres get less smooth. The other shapes get more smooth. I guess that's because the spheres have a render perfect option when they're still primitives, which renders them as a perfect sphere every time, regardless of their poly count. I think that's breaking with that deformer. But it's not so bad, and I like the general effect it has on everything else, so I'm going to live with it. Yeah, and that atmosphere is starting to look really good back here. I'm gonna turn that up even a little more. Cool. So this is really getting there. Loving the colors. This orange bit right here is really sweet. Like in the way this is looking back here. Yeah. Let's do another test rendering though. Bear in mind the color is pretty much all driven from this gradient we created in Illustrator using the Freeform Gradient tool. I'm going to quit that down because I'm done with that. I want to save the rendering. I want to save the GPU power for the rendering. Yep. I like those longer shadows a lot. Can angle off the sun slightly differently. I'm actually going to turn on my shadows so I can see how they're being cast. Sort of cast them. I mean, it's great that you can preview this and see where across these objects the shadows are being cast, because that can help you really define the composition, the way these shadows cast across things. This is looking pretty good. All right. I'm gonna call it. Let's go up to 1920 by 1080. Oh, the final rendering. I'll pop open Photoshop too. Minimal color correction is going to be needed here because all we've got is bright saturated colors. I mean, of course, I could play with it all day, but I don't think that'll be necessary. This is a really great purple color here. And that luminant object looks great. And I like this sort of strip of the luminant stuff back here. Really leads your eye through the composition. Gives it a kind of a landscape feel. Yeah. That smoothing tab, it did a lot of good for most of these shapes. I mentioned, the spheres broke down a little bit. The bigger ones you can see, but like this guy, you don't even notice. It's really not so bad. If I wanted to, I could have gone and grouped things further so that the objects that really needed the smoothing were in a group with the smoothing deformer. And the ones that didn't really need it, like the spheres, basically everything but the spheres would be outside of it. It also looks like the these cone shapes weren't affected by it. That's to be expected with that hard point on the tip and the fact that they're primitives. Although no, deformer should work on primitives. That doesn't make sense. All right. Getting close. I do have to say this reminds me of a Lisa Frank notebook or something like that. Let's go all the way back and see where we started from. It's fun to do as the final renderings knocking out. So there we go. That looks really flat. But the notion is there. Blocking it out. Adding forms. Adding reflections. Yeah, and that last detailed bit along the top edge of the composition made a huge difference. It's there. Pretty sweet. Now, what would also be cool is to model some small little temples or castles or houses or towns and kind of scatter them throughout here, especially if they were sort of alien looking and integrated nicely into this very strange looking abstract landscape. Like a cool alien world. Might also be cool to apply some fur or grass to some of these blobs and have the texture of the grass shine through the color of the gradient. I think you could apply that that gradient image we created to the hair channel. I'll have to look into that. I'm pretty sure that's possible. That would be cool. But not today, my friends. All right. There we go. All right, I love your chat window, but I gotta move you for Photoshop. Here. Let's adjust levels, contrast a bit. It's definitely easy to overdo it with color on this guy. And of course you could just adjust the color range a whole bunch of different ways and get some interesting results. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Which is good because that's what we started. I'll undo that. Nice. Well, so there we have it. It was a pretty simple setup. We got to play with Illustrator, which is fun. We don't normally get to do that. And then we had a fairly straightforward process in Cinema in terms of just throwing this onto a camera projected texture and adding these organic shapes and meshing them together and talking a little bit about contrast and variation and creating this very cool Lisa Frank landscape. So I have to say thanks a lot for tuning in, everyone. I had a lot of fun making this. If you want to keep up with me and the work that I'm doing, Check me out on Instagram and the other social media spots at DLGNCE. The portfolio website is diligence.studio. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, share it with a pal, and I will catch you next week. This is Stuart saying goodbye. See ya.